It's November 24th, 2014, a quiet morning at Sony Pictures Entertainment in Los Angeles. Employees are settling in with their coffees, ready for a normal workday, when suddenly their computer screens flicker. A red skeletal figure on a black background with the words, "Hacked by Nannan GOP," flashes onto every screen. A chilling message accompanies it. "We've already warned you, and this is just the beginning. We've obtained all your internal data. If you don't obey us, we'll release it to the world." Within minutes, panic erupts. Phones ring off the hook in the IT department as files become inaccessible and computers shut down. A Sony executive stands frozen in front of her monitor, watching the threatening skull splash page. Her inbox won't open. Confidential files have vanished. One frightened employee shouts, "I can't log in! Everything's gone." This is not a movie plot, it's a real cyber attack. Sony Pictures is under siege. Over the next few hours, technicians discover that roughly 3/4 of the company's servers and computers have been destroyed or rendered inoperable. Payroll systems, email, financial records, all wiped clean or locked behind encryption. The perpetrators call themselves the Guardians of Peace, but investigators will soon trace the attack to an unexpected source. The Sony hack goes down as one of the most devastating corporate cyber attacks in history. Its impact ripples beyond Hollywood. The hackers leak thousands of sensitive files, from unreleased movies to private emails, and even threaten violence against theaters unless Sony cancels The Interview, a comedy mocking North Korea's leader. Under pressure, Sony pulls the film from major theaters, a chilling precedent of cyber terrorism curbing free speech. Within weeks, US intelligence officials publicly accuse North Korea of orchestrating the attack. It's an unprecedented moment, a cyber assault forcing a global confrontation. But to those watching North Korea, it's not a complete surprise. The secretive cyber army of the Hermit Kingdom, often referred to by names like the Lazarus Group or APT-38, had been active long before Sony's servers melted down. Operating from the shadows, this elite unit has penetrated banks, stolen hundreds of millions of dollars, and sown chaos worldwide. Their missions range from espionage to financial crime to outright digital sabotage. North Korea, an isolated and impoverished nation, has quietly become a surprising cyber superpower. How did it happen? Decades ago, despite chronic blackouts and limited internet for its citizens, North Korea began pouring resources into cyber warfare. In the late 1990s, Pyongyang's military intelligence arm, the Reconnaissance General Bureau, set up dedicated hacking units. One, known as Bureau 121, became the home of the country's most talented computer experts. These hackers are not underground hacktivists. They are hand-picked, highly trained officers who enjoy special status in North Korean society. Identified as teens for their aptitude, they attend elite schools like the University of Automation in Pyongyang, spending 5 years learning to infiltrate computer systems. Those who excel join Bureau 121 and become part of a pampered elite. In a nation where many struggle, these cyber warriors and their families receive luxurious apartments, cash bonuses, and praise from the regime. For North Korea's leaders, cyber warfare is the perfect weapon. As one defector put it, "The strongest weapon is cyber." In North Korea, it's called the secret war. With a small team of genius-level hackers, Pyongyang can strike rich nations in cyberspace without firing a shot. By the mid-2000s, the regime was dispatching many of these operatives overseas to broaden their reach. Intelligence reports indicate North Korean hacker teams quietly moved into places like China, operating from cities such as Shenyang under innocuous covers. Working abroad gave them better internet access and a layer of deniability. By 2009, this cyber army began making its presence felt. South Korea's government and media networks were hit by waves of attacks, websites defaced, data wiped, citywide outages. One early operation, codenamed Operation Troy, 2009-2012, deployed malware to spy on South Korean military networks. Security researchers started noticing a pattern. A single actor was behind a string of high-profile hacks and cyber heists, and they gave it a name: Lazarus Group. This outfit, now believed to be an umbrella for North Korea's hacking operations, became notorious after a bold escalation in 2013. That year, on one dark day in March, networks of several South Korean banks and TV broadcasters suddenly crashed. ATMs froze, news broadcasts went silent. This attack, later dubbed Dark Seoul, knocked out tens of thousands of computers. South Korean officials traced the breach to the North's cyber units, signaling that Pyongyang could disrupt a modern economy at will. Then came November 2014 and the Sony Pictures hack, which propelled Lazarus Group onto the world stage. This operation was a crossover of espionage and intimidation. The hackers didn't just steal data, they tried to blackmail a major Hollywood studio to halt a film release. It was a jaw-dropping demonstration of cyber power used for political ends, hacking as a form of state-sponsored extortion. The boldness of the Sony attack startled governments and security experts around the globe. It became clear that North Korea's hackers were not just thieves or spies. They were willing to inflict massive damage to further Pyongyang's agenda. In the aftermath, Western agencies scrambled to respond. New sanctions were slapped on North Korean entities, and the FBI launched an exhaustive investigation. Analysts pored over lines of malicious code and server logs. They even noted that the malware had similarities to earlier North Korean attacks. Within weeks, the United States officially pinned the blame on Pyongyang, with the FBI citing evidence like hacker tools and IP addresses linked to North Korea. Even as Sony was picking up the pieces, the hackers of Lazarus were already moving on to their next ambition, one driven not by political revenge, but by cold, hard cash. February 2016. In Dhaka, Bangladesh, the headquarters of Bangladesh Bank, the country's central bank, is quiet on a Friday night. Most staff have gone home for the weekend, but deep inside the bank's network, unseen and unfelt, intruders are at work. For weeks, hackers have been lurking in the bank's computer systems, spying and preparing. Now they initiate their endgame. At the New York Federal Reserve, where Bangladesh Bank holds an account, a series of urgent payment requests arrives via the secure SWIFT network. These messages, bearing valid Bangladesh Bank codes, instruct the Fed to send nearly $1 billion from Bangladesh's reserves to accounts in the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and beyond. If executed, it will be one of the largest bank thefts in history, and it's all happening through digital trickery. Back in Dhaka, a loan printer used to automatically record SWIFT transactions suddenly stops working. Bank staff won't discover until Monday that the printer's failure was no accident, but a hacker ploy to delay the alarm. By the time anyone notices, millions will have been siphoned out. Over the weekend, the hackers' plan unfolds. Dozens of fraudulent transfers slip through. Only a bit of luck and last-minute scrutiny prevent total disaster. One transfer request raises suspicion due to a simple typo, stopping a $20 million transfer, and a few other fraudulent transactions are blocked. Still, by the time the scheme is uncovered, $81 million has vanished from Bangladesh's account, successfully stolen. The money trails into casinos and accounts in the Philippines, then goes cold. A huge sum from one of the world's poorest countries is gone. The investigation that follows reads like a global whodunit. Bangladesh and U.S. officials work together and soon find fingerprints of Lazarus Group in the code and techniques used. The audacity and scale of the hack point to a state-sponsored operation, a bank robbery perpetrated by a government. Forensic analysts later tie the crime back to North Korea's hackers, making this one of the most brazen cyber heists ever attributed to a nation-state. This Bangladesh bank heist signals a strategic shift. North Korea had discovered that hacking could directly fund its regime. After all, stealing $81 million beats printing counterfeit bills or illicit arms deals. The success in Bangladesh emboldened Pyongyang. Over the next few years, cyber units linked to North Korea, often dubbed APT-38 when it comes to financial hacks, went after banks in Vietnam, Taiwan, India, Mexico, and more. They exploited the global banking system's connectivity to steal tens of millions at a time. Each attempt showed the growing finesse of these hackers in navigating financial systems. How do North Korean hackers manage these feats? Their operations follow a certain playbook, a blend of clever social engineering and sophisticated coding. It often begins with a deceptive email. A banker or employee at a targeted organization might receive what looks like a routine message, maybe a job application, an invoice, or an urgent security update. Hidden inside is a malicious link or attachment. One careless click and the hackers quietly gain a foothold. This tactic, known as spear phishing, is their favored door in. Once inside a network, the intruders move stealthily. They might spend days or weeks mapping out the system, escalating their privileges, and finding the sensitive keys to the kingdom. In a bank, that might be the servers managing money transfers. In a movie studio, it's the file servers with emails and film cuts. The hackers install custom malware, essentially spy programs, to communicate back to their controllers and even destroy data if needed. In other cases, they use hidden backdoors to ensure they can slip back in even if part of their malware is discovered and removed. When it comes to exfiltrating, stealing data or money, they cover their tracks meticulously. Stolen files are encrypted and sent in small chunks to external servers so they won't be noticed. Stolen money, especially cryptocurrency, is laundered through a maze of accounts. For instance, after hacking a cryptocurrency exchange, the hackers might split the loot into thousands of smaller transactions, bouncing them through different digital wallets and mixers, services that obscure the origin of funds. By the end, it becomes extremely difficult for investigators to trace the funds as North Korean. They essentially wash the money through cyberspace and then convert it to cash or goods for the regime. Each attack is like a covert mission, and like any good spies, the hackers communicate via encrypted channels and route their connections through multiple countries to hide their origin. They operate mostly from North Korea and some bases in China, but they'll bounce their internet traffic through hacked servers on other continents, so a bank in Bangladesh might think the thief is in Vietnam or Europe until the trail is painstakingly tracked back to Pyongyang. Despite their best efforts to mask their identity, the group's exploits have developed a signature. Cyber analysts note similarities in malicious code and peculiarities in how they name files. Over time, these breadcrumbs have allowed experts to attribute many seemingly unrelated cyber incidents to the same North Korean actors. The real-world consequences of North Korea's cyber campaigns have been profound. In the Sony hack, a corporation was financially damaged, tens of millions in losses, and creatively stifled. An entire industry woke up to the reality that a dictator's displeasure could become a digital sword hanging over free expression. The bank heists triggered alarms in the finance world. Banks worldwide rushed to shore up their security and examine how a national central bank could be so vulnerable. Bangladesh Bank's governor resigned amid the fallout. The incident forced changes in how banks handle SWIFT transfers and prompted greater international cooperation to secure financial networks. The 2017 WannaCry ransomware attack took things to another level. In May of that year, computers in over 150 countries were suddenly locked by malware that displayed a message. Oops, your files have been encrypted. Hospitals in the UK, shipping companies, railway systems, universities. The worm spread indiscriminately, infecting over 300,000 machines. It was eventually linked to North Korea, making it effectively a reckless cyber weapon that crippled hospital systems and businesses globally. WannaCry caused massive financial damage and exposed how vulnerable critical infrastructure was. Lives were even put at risk when surgeries had to be canceled due to hospital computers being down. Then there are the cryptocurrency thefts, which have quietly funneled staggering amounts of money to Pyongyang. In one case, more than $500 million vanished from a Japanese cryptocurrency exchange overnight. In another, about $600 million was stolen from an online games crypto network. These heists, often overshadowed by bigger geopolitical news, have real impact. Experts believe a significant portion of North Korea's missile program funding now comes from stolen cryptocurrency. In other words, when North Korean hackers steal digital coins, they might be paying for the country's next ballistic missile. All these actions have prompted a worldwide manhunt of sorts. Cybersecurity agencies, law enforcement, and private companies are collaborating as never before to stop these hacks and hold the perpetrators accountable. The U.S. Department of Justice has indicted North Korean hackers, publicly naming members of Lazarus Group in an effort to hold them accountable. Governments have issued sanctions against entities and individuals tied to Lazarus Group, trying to freeze whatever assets or travel abilities they have outside North Korea. Cryptocurrency exchanges and banks have been urged to tighten monitoring so that stolen funds can be flagged or seized. Still, the core members of this hacker unit remain safely out of reach, behind North Korea's borders. Indictments and sanctions, while they send a message, have not stopped the attacks. If anything, Pyongyang's hackers have grown bolder, likely because cyber operations have become a lifeline for the regime's finances and a key tool of its statecraft. As we look to the future, North Korea's hacker army forces us to reckon with an unsettling truth. The nature of warfare and crime has changed. A country that struggles to keep its lights on can black out someone else's. A nation with a tiny economy can steal millions from the world's biggest banks. And a regime that might not win a conventional battle can still wreak havoc across the globe, all through the internet. This reality has not gone unnoticed by other nations. Today, dozens of countries have cyber units, and global rivalries are extending into the digital domain. What North Korea has done is a dramatic example of a broader trend. Cyber warfare is the new great equalizer, allowing small players to hit far above their weight. The prospect of a cyber arms race raises tough questions. How do we defend against attacks that can come at the speed of light, with no warning, from unseen perpetrators? What constitutes an act of war in cyberspace? Is it stealing money? Stealing secrets? Shutting down a power grid? There are no clear rules yet. In Pyongyang, cyber operations are celebrated internally. The hackers are heroes to the regime. Picture a young programmer in a windowless room, writing code that will unleash chaos in faraway places. No one outside will ever know his name or see his face. But his keystrokes can shake nations. It's a form of power that was science fiction just a few decades ago. As this story of North Korea's elite hacker unit comes to a close, we are left with a mix of awe and unease. Awe at the ingenuity and audacity of how these hackers execute their missions. The world has entered a new kind of Cold War, fought with code. And as the hackers of Pyongyang have proven, you don't need to be a superpower to be a super threat in this domain. The shadowy figures behind keyboards in North Korea have already changed the rules of the game. The question that remains is, are we ready for what comes next?